let him do that, because that's what it is. And I'm sure we'll have him back another time, because you're gonna be amazed at the stuff he has.
Hi guys, I'm Russell. My farm is called Care to Grow. We're a gourmet and medicinal mushroom farm located in Golden Gate Estates in Collier County. We grow gourmet and medicinal mushrooms for the local market. So I sell them at 3rd Street Farmers Market. I also sell to local area restaurants and country clubs. I'm going to be doing a talk tonight about mushroom biology and some identification. This PowerPoint was put together with David Outerbridge from the Lee County University of Florida IFAS Extension Agency. I actually have his card, and I recommend you guys taking his information and reaching out to Lee County if you want to know more about their mushroom programs. They're trying to educate people about mushrooms and among other things, fruit growing, and they're really, really an incredible resource. The Collier Extension Office actually was a huge resource for me when I was starting my farm back in 2017. They let me, I did a bunch of small farm stuff with them, and the information that they have is invaluable, and it's free, and they give it to the public. It's incredible. So without further ado, we'll do a little bit of mushroom talk, and this is more about the biology of mushrooms and kind of how we identify them in nature. So, all right, this is just, I don't know if you guys can read that or not, but there's gonna be some more, they're doing more mushroom stuff. Go ahead to the next slide. All right, so today's topics are: what are mushrooms, intro to the diversity of fungi, what are the main parts of a fungus, distinguishing characteristics of mushrooms, growth habitat and habitats, and basic identification methods. Go ahead, next slide. So we got a couple pictures up there, and we have A, B, and C. Do you guys know, any of you guys know what those are, or if any of those are mushrooms? A is absolutely a mushroom.
Really?
Yep.
But it sends all those little spores everywhere.
Yep, and that's how mushrooms reproduce. They use their spores to reproduce.
A puffball.
Yeah, that's actually, it is a puffball. It's in the puffball family. That is called an earth star. That's actually a really common Florida mushroom, and we find them in mulchy or woody, like you'll find them in disturbed areas, or you'll find them in leafy debris areas. How about B?
No.
So B is actually a slime mold. So it is a fungus, but it doesn't produce a mushroom like we would, like an edible mushroom that we'd be used to seeing. And then how about C? So C is a lichen, and lichen is actually a symbiotic relationship between fungus and algae. So people don't know that, but they'll see lichens, and there's many different lichens that grow on trees, and they're working together. They're a fungus that's working together with a photosynthetic algae, and the algae and the fungus, the algae uses photosynthesis to create sugars, and the fungus provides a house or a host, a space for the algae to grow, and they exchange nutrients and support each other's growth in the environment.
Usnea grows here.
I'm sorry, what?
Usnea.
Usnea.
It's
a lichen.
that grows from the trees.
Next slide. All right, what is a mushroom?
It's the fruit.
It's the fruit body of a fungus. All right, so not all funguses produce mushrooms, but all funguses do produce a spore-giving structure. So the mushroom is actually the reproductive organ of funguses. Okay. So it's the only one part of a larger organism, and it facilitates fungal reproduction. So really, it's specifically, like the mushrooms that I grow, and all mushrooms that you see are specific structures that are made to produce spores. Spores are the next generation, like a seed of a tree or a plant. They're a little bit different than a seed or a tree or a plant, because they only contain about half of the genetic material necessary for the next generation. So it's a little different. A seed is going to be mated. It's going to be full. It's going to be what they call, it's going to be a complete zygote. So it's actually going to be the DNA of the next generation. A spore is what they call haploid. So if I get too technical, I'll go on a little further, but basically what it means is only contains half of the DNA for the next generation. So two spores have to find each other in nature before they can make another mushroom. That doesn't mean that they can't grow into another fungus.
Can spores from different mushrooms?
Yes. Yeah, and so like in mammalian cells, we have male and female. We as far as our xenotypes, right? So in fungus, we know about 30 different phenotypes. So there's actually 30 different types that can mate. So we've been doing some DNA recently. They've been doing a lot of DNA breakdown of mushrooms, and they're finding that some mushrooms that appear like as slime molds are actually closer related to even mushrooms that we eat. So that we see these larger mushrooms because of their diversity, their ability to mate across.
How long does it take from the beginning to when you pick it to eat?
So for edible mushrooms, I have ones that will grow in as little as 14 days. So oyster mushroom, which is actually this one right here, this bag was inoculated 10 days ago. If you cut this bag open in 5 days, you'll have mushrooms. 5 to 7 days, you'll have mushrooms. So it's actually pretty quick for some fungus. Other funguses take can take a very long time before they'll even fruit. This mushroom here, the Ganoderma, this mushroom, it will grow for at least 45 days before it actually fruits. And then it'll continue to fruit for weeks. So, next slide. All right, so just some terms for mushrooms. Fungi, it's a kingdom of eukaryotic life containing spore-producing organisms. Can be single-celled or multicellular. So all fungus really is a single-cellular organism, but the cells will work together to form a multicellular organism. So what that means is that each cell contains all the genetic material and information needed to continue to propagate. So one cell will divide and make another cell, and it'll continue to grow. Spore is the unit of sexual or asexual reproduction in fungi, typically haploid producing new hyphae under favorable conditions. And that haploid meaning that it only contains half of the genetic material. So when we think of seeds are all of the genetic material to give rise to the next plant. The spores are haploid, so they do need to perform another function of mating in the soil or in their environment, all right? Phyla is a taxonomy, category of life, class above kingdom. So we have the plant kingdom, we have the animal kingdom, and then we have a whole kingdom for itself, which is fungus, all right? So mycelium is a network of interconnected individual hyphae that form the vegetative structure of fungi. So you can see the mycelium in these bags here. You can see it spreading throughout the bag. You can actually see here, you can see this margin here where it hasn't spread yet. So you can see that these are filled with sawdust. Mushrooms they're the decomposers of lignum and cellulose. So all plants make their cell walls from lignum or cellulose. And fungus is really the only organism on the planet that can break that down and consume it and produce what we call fungal sugars to give itself its food. If it wasn't for fungus, things wouldn't rot. So if it wasn't for fungus, we wouldn't have new soil. And if it wasn't for fungus, trees and plant debris would just pile up and it would never disappear. So you can probably think that there's other organisms that eat wood or eat lignum and cellulose. They don't. They eat fungus. So like termites, right? A lot of people think termites eat wood, but they don't. They actually grow fungus. They're fungus farmers. Go ahead.
Do you need specific sawdust for certain mushrooms?
Absolutely. Yeah. So mushrooms are gonna, depending upon the species of the fungus, it's gonna be it's gonna be unique to that, But they're like almost all the mushrooms I grow, they're known as white rot saprobes, and the mycelium appears as a white fungus, and they're gonna eat hardwood. They're gonna eat, this is oak. They're gonna eat hardwood, beech, oak, maples, and they're not gonna. The mushrooms that I grow are not parasitic funguses, so they're not gonna parasitize a living tree. They're only gonna eat a dead tree. They're not gonna kill a living tree. Although that being said, there are parasitic funguses that will definitely kill your plants, but these aren't. These guys are actually really beneficial to our soils. So hyphae is essentially one single piece of mycelium. That's all hyphae is. So mycelium is a mass of hyphae, hyphae is one mycelium, one tiny piece, okay? Mosaic, that's just mesic, I'm sorry, is an environment with a moderate amount of moisture. So that's kind of where you're gonna see fungus when there's more moisture in the environment. If you have a very dry environment, if you have an arid environment, like in the desert, or like here, we have a lot of sandy soils that don't have organic material. We don't have a lot of fungus in our soil. So we'll talk more about that, though, why that's important, okay? Phytoremediation. Fungus can be used to phytoremediate. It's really that the fungus is able to consume compounds because of the enzymes that they make. So they're able to consume compounds that may not be digestible by other organisms. We also, symbiotic funguses do form symbiotic relationships with a lot of plants and trees, okay? And also like algae, like in the lichen. So it's important. Next slide. So what do mushrooms do? We've been kind of talking about that a little bit. They provide pivotal nutrient cycling role in most of terrestrial and some aquatic ecosystems. So what that means is that they're recycling nutrients and they're making it bioavailable to the environment. They're breaking it down, they're making it into sugars and other constituents. They feed us, but they also feed our plants. The mushrooms form relations, some mushrooms form relationships specifically with the roots systems of trees, and they'll actually grow inside the roots. It's called mycorrhizal, and those mycorrhizal connections are able to bring nutrients into those plants in exchange for sugars from the host plant. Okay, so they're exchanging and they're working together. There's this thing, it's out there on the internet, it's called the Wood Wide Web, and it's something that's kind of cool to check out. And it talks about how our forests and fungus work together to create soil and promote the growth of plants. So I know you guys are all trying to grow plants, and we need fungus in our soils to grow plants. So they form symbiotic relationships with 90% of all terrestrial plant species. So almost all plants use fungus. Phytoremediation for polluted soils, food source for mammals, insects, gastropods. Gastropods are just animals that have stomachs. So fungus doesn't have a stomach, it externally digests. So I think that it's kind of different. We think of eating things and then they go in our gut and our gut digests it. Fungus doesn't do that. Fungus exudes these enzymes. The enzymes go out into the world, they break down its constituents, and then it kind of grows over that to bring it into its cell wall and incorporate it into its body. Next slide. The Wood Wide Web, there it is right there. I recommend checking it out. It's a little video here. I don't know if the volume, oh, we can't hear it. I don't know, it doesn't look like there's any volume. That's okay. Definitely check it out. This is from YouTube, but it's called the Wood Wide Web. If you just check out on YouTube, you can definitely watch it, and it's showing you how fungus is growing into the roots, exchanging nutrients and enzymes. And these are compounds that trees can't get on their own. These are compounds that plants don't produce themselves, but they're able to exchange with the help of fungus. So fungus can actually be mycorrhizal. They're showing it there mycorrhizally, and that means in the roots. But we're also finding out now, they're talking about it here, we're also finding out that it's even in the canopy, there are funguses that grow, that can help plants grow in the canopy, and those are called ectomycorrhizal.
Wow.
I'll go to the next slide. All right, so we're gonna do a little biology with mushrooms. I wish I had a laser pointer here to help out. So fungus appears in different genera or phyla, and we just have some different ones. You guys have probably heard of like truffles, right? Most of the mushrooms that I grow are basomyces. And what that is about is about the structure of the mushroom itself. So it's actually how it produces its spore and how it grows. And then ascomyces is another one that you may see. Sometimes you ever see these little there's one called bird's nest fungus. It's kind of funny. We'll see it. It looks like a little cup, and it looks like it has two little eggs. It's actually really common under oaks here in this environment, and you'll see them. And they're really tiny, but they're kind of neat. And they're ascomyces. And then there's other ascomyces. The difference between ascomyces and basomyces is really the way they produce their spores. Basomyces will produce a single individual spore. Ascomyces produces little packets of spores. So if you were to look at the spores, they're together. There's normally 8 of them together in a packet. And ascomyces can appear differently generally. You ever heard of morel mushrooms? All right, a lot of people like morels. Morels are ascomyces. All right, everybody eats button mushroom, right? Like a white button mushroom. Those are basomyces. Okay, and they're producing. It's just the way that the mushroom produces its spore structure. Okay, so there's a lot of different fungus that can have different appearances. We have basomyces. You can see ascomyces there. There's not a huge group. There's just there's fewer ones. And you can see the basomyces are a really large group of mushrooms. So there's just a lot of basomyces in the world that produce mushrooms. So and then there's another one, the zygomycota, which is you're gonna generally see them more as they're going to be like the slime molds, and they're going to be the stuff that's in the soil. They're not necessarily going to produce mushrooms that we see. So, next slide. All right, phyllo, more about the basomyces. Basomycota. So they're mycorrhizal. They can also be parasitic. So some basomyces can be parasitic. They're if you ever heard of corn smut, so in Mexico they will grow this fungus. It's almost it appears like a blue or white.
Huichicotle?
Yeah, huichicote. Yep,
Okay.
huichicote. Yep, and that's how they prepare it. And it's actually a parasite to the corn plant, but it's delicious.
Yeah.
Actually, when it's prepared right. So, and that's a fungus. So, and that's a parasitic fungus. And it's killing the corn. So it's parasitizing its host. It's not helping it grow. So like I said, there are some that aren't. And then also we go down there and talks about lichen. Lichen are the relationship between a fungus and an algae. So go ahead, next slide.
Can you grow that by yourself?
Can you grow corn smut?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you can get the spores, you can inject them into your corn plants. And actually they do that.
Does the plant actually have to be alive, or you just
Yes.
have to?
No, you have to have a living plant, and it's gonna parasitize the fruit. So when they do that, they will wait till the fruit forms, and then they'll inject it. But don't do it in Indiana, because the spores will spread, and the people next door to you will kill you because their corn crop won't come in.
I never go north. I stay down here, man.
Go ahead.
When I was a little kid, I remember going out in the cornfields that were right next to our property, and there would be corn growing out there, and there would be this ugly stuff in the very top of some of the cobs of corn. Is that what you're calling?
Yeah,
corn smut?
that was probably the smut. Mhm.
So and
yeah.
you're saying that if that was cooked properly or something, it would taste
Yeah,
good?
yeah.
That's
So
delicious.
in
Great.
Yeah, in Mexico, what was it called again?
Huichicotle.
Huichicotle. Yeah, it's actually so it's edible. The fungus is
It's a
edible.
very common thing that
Ugly
they.
as it was.
Yes,
In
yeah, it's like
Mexico-
a bluish white, almost. You know,
Yeah.
it looks like blue cheese.
Yeah, it's like blobby. It's really scary looking.
yeah.
Yeah, but it
Yeah.
tastes good.
And the fruit doesn't do very well. Corn is not going to do very good with
But
that.
you have to cook it, right?
Yeah, you cook it. Yeah, they prepare it in Mexico. I've never.
There are restaurants here that do it too.
Yeah, so it's kind of a delicacy, but at the same time, when it's spread throughout a corn crop, it can be a real problem. So it's a parasite to the crop. It's not whereas some funguses are in the soil and they're providing a connection that's good, because everybody thinks all funguses are bad on their plants, but they're not.
No.
They're not. Yeah. So we're just different order of mushrooms here. It's Agaricalis, and then that's a type of mushroom, Amanita. We have boletes, which are boletus. You guys probably seen a lot of boletes. If you ever see them, they're like a mushroom that come up, and then you'll look underneath, and they look like they have a bunch of little holes in them. They're kind of spongy. We have a lot of boletes that grow around here that are native. A lot of them are edible. If you don't know where they are, I don't recommend eating them, but they can be edible.
Do they come in different colors?
Yeah, you'll see them sometimes they're bright red
That's
with
what
a
I
yellow.
had in my yard.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I couldn't believe that it looked like a globe shape.
Yeah, it
And
looks like a regular
made out
mushroom.
of red lace, brilliant red.
Oh no, that was a stinkhorn fungus.
Oh, that's so nasty.
Yeah, and they smell really bad once they start to grow like that. And they're actually, what they're doing is they're attracting flies, and the
Okay.
flies land on them and they spread their spores that way. And if you were to see that mushroom before it formed, it looked like a little egg. So it'd be in what they call a vulva in the ground, and you would dig that up, and then the stinkhorn would emerge. It comes up and it makes that red lattice. And there's several stinkhorns, and that's actually Basomyces as well.
It was pretty.
It's beautiful. It is actually. And if you find that and you know what it is
Yeah.
before it opens, it's actually edible.
Oh yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
want to do.
But once you smell it,
Next time.
I
Once-
kicked it. That's how I thought.
I don't think-
I was in the lawn because I had mushrooms occasionally. I kicked it.
yeah,
Oh my God, I had to wash my shoes.
yeah, they can smell pretty bad. They smell like death, really, like rotting.
Funk, man, just
Corpse,
pure
yeah.
funk.
And they're attracting flies, so that's what they're doing. Their idea is they're attracting an insect, and then that insect is going to carry the spore to
That's
another
what mangoes do.
location. Yeah,
Mangoes smell like garbage.
we all do that.
Right.
We all like to attract insects. So we have some Russulas is a really common species. You have the Lactarius. Lactarius is another one that you'll find. If you break the mushroom, it'll exude like a little latex, kind of like when you break the stem of a mango and you see that white latex. These will do kind of the same thing. It's like a white milk. They're actually, I don't know of a Lactarius that's not edible. I just don't know if they all taste good. So I don't think any of them are poisonous, but there's actually a really beautiful one called Indigo Lactarius, and it's a bright blue mushroom, and when you break it, it makes this like bluish colored milk. It's actually really neat, and it's edible, and not that great. I've eaten a couple of them, but I wouldn't turn them down if I was foraging, but I wouldn't.
Do you have a favorite mushroom?
Real hard. That's hard. I love mushrooms, so it's hard to decide what my favorite one is. I grow probably 9 different mushrooms, all because I can't decide which one to grow. So.
Grow honeys?
No. So honey is a parasitic mushroom,
Well, I've eaten
but
those.
they're good. But they need to be cooked thoroughly because they need to be cooked thoroughly.
And they're so good that they almost make you sick to your stomach.
Well,
Like you don't want to eat mushrooms for a while.
yeah, well, and you'll find them in you'll find
Big
large
clumps.
clumps, right? And actually the honey mushroom, I'm trying to think of a scientific name, it's not coming to me right now, but
Kind of in central Florida more.
yeah, there's certain mushrooms you'll find, but they're a parasite. So they're gonna kill the host tree.
Yeah. They were growing on an old oak root.
Yeah, and they're growing on the root, and they probably killed the oak. So the oak was dead from because it's a parasite. And the largest organism in the world is actually a honey mushroom, and it's in Oregon. It's 2,500 hectares, not acres, hectares.
You're talking about the mycelium?
The mycelium of it,
Yes.
yeah. And if you go there, it's a big open field. And there's no trees. There's no trees because the honey mushroom is there, and they don't grow. When the trees land there and they start to grow, the fungus eats the tree. But there's grass. But
If there's no trees, let's say like a parasite, it uses up all its host organisms. Does it die?
So it's able to, for whatever reason, it's been persisting there for thousands of years. We think it's one of the oldest and largest organisms on Earth.
So but what is it eating though if there's no trees?
It's probably eating cellulose and it's formed a relationship with the environment there. So it's getting nutrition probably from the prairie plants. But yeah, for the most part, it's a parasite to trees. So, but honey mushroom is good. But remember, it needs to be cooked thoroughly because it does contain a toxin that will make you sick to your stomach.
But it didn't make me sick. It
Right,
just
it's just
made
you
me
ate so many of them.
Like overeating so many
Yeah.
mushrooms, you don't want to eat it for a while.
Yeah. Chicken of the woods is like that too. You have a question?
I forgot.
Oh. Go ahead.
You're too young for
You
that.
can come back for it. If you remember it again, just go ahead.
Up in Michigan, at one time I was living there, and at the back of the property, there was a relatively untouched area, and there were giant puffball mushrooms back there, and they were not only edible, if you sliced a piece of it, it would fill up the whole, one slice would fill up the whole frying pan. Do you have anything that grows down here that's that big?
Well, no, we don't generate. So here in Southwest Florida,
Yeah.
we don't get those giant puffballs like that. I've seen them in Northern Florida and in Georgia. I was in West Virginia, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and I found there's two varieties. There's a giant one, and then there's another one that's a little bit smaller, that's about that big. They'll get about that big, and you'll find them in prairies. Those you generally find in grassy areas,
Okay.
not with tree environments.
Now, what is?
But they are edible. They're edible before they spore. If you cut them open and they're brown or yellow on the inside, they're.
Oh, I
they-
cut them, they were snow white and
Yeah, as long
fried
as
them,
they're
and
white
they
like
were
that, they're
wonderful.
edible.
Now, what is the one that looks like a little puffball? You cut it open and it's black inside, with little white streaks?
So that's actually that's a mushroom that's actually really beneficial. That's a mycorrhizal puffball. It is a puffball. It's in the
Can
same
you eat them?
family. I've never eaten them.
Because I have them all in my yard.
Yeah, well, what's happening is you have good soil there, and so they're forming a relationship in the soil with the trees, and that's actually a really beneficial mushroom. Something that could probably be introduced into environments and help oaks and other trees grow.
Good.
So, all right, you want to do the next slide? All right, parts of a fungus. So this is more. We've kind of talked a little bit about this stuff, but mycelium is a bunching or a group of hyphae. Hyphae are the individual single strands. A spore will go into the host environment and it'll germinate and it'll form one hyphae. If the environment's good, it'll reproduce, it'll copy itself and make another hyphae. And make another hyphae, make another hyphae. Mushrooms double in size every day. So it'll keep making cells. So you know, like this culture, like when I started this 10 days ago, I put maybe a tablespoon of mushroom in here, and it's already spread throughout the entire bag.
Do you grow your own spores? I mean,
So I don't grow. I do
inoculation stuff?
Yeah. So I also sell it too. So I make what we call in the industry we call it spawn.
Spores.
Spawn, yep. So we call it spawn. Spawn can be made from a multitude of different grains. It can also be made from sawdust. It can also be made in a liquid, as a liquid culture. So we do a liquid fermentation of fungal mycelium as well. So I actually will do all 3 of those in my lab. I can also take spores and germinate them to get a new vigor, and where I would actually take the spores and, like I said before, the spore contains only half of the genetic material. So if you take your time, you can isolate that, and then you can actually take 2 isolated and you can mate them, and you can make a new generation or a new mushroom, and that'll give you more vigor. So it's like when you clone or you graft a plant multiple times, over time you lose that vigor of growth, right? So we'll do that occasionally, but for the most part, we can easily take a mushroom. I can easily take a tissue sample of a mushroom and continue to grow it from one tissue sample.
Really?
Yeah. So hyphae develop specialized functions, thus the mycorrhizal connection that they do. Also, what's really interesting is for our soils here is nematode consumption.
Yes.
So the Platyrus oyster, which is Platyrus is known to be nemicidal. It's actually a carnivorous fungus. So in the soil, when it's present in the soil, it will actually eat harmful nematodes.
Yes.
So when you have fungus like this in your soil, like a lot of people have trouble with tomatoes. We get root knot nematode with tomatoes here. They spray like crazy in Immokalee for it, but if they would just build their soil with the right fungus and they had a nice fungal layer and the roots were in that fungal layer, I can attest to it. I plant tomatoes in my compost all the time. They grow enormous. They don't need anything other than to be planted in good soil. They don't need any fertilizer. They don't need It's incredible. Go ahead.
Anyone who has a fig tree should have that, because nematodes tend to attack
Yeah.
fig trees here in Florida.
Yeah, they attack a lot of plants. So building that soil with when you have a fungal dominant soil, you're gonna exclude, when you have the good fungus, you're gonna exclude parasitic funguses, and you're gonna exclude pests.
Can you put that in I'm growing Everglades tomatoes in pots?
Yep. So
Can you do that?
yeah. So what I would recommend is if you did like a kit like this, is after you grew your mushrooms, you could, after it's kind of, the mushroom is kind of expended, the block, the mycelium is still alive, you can break that up and put that in the soil with it, and it'll continue to grow, and it'll help your plants grow.
That's awesome.
So mycorrhizal connections, they've done studies where you have soil without mycorrhizal fungus, you have soil with mycorrhizal fungus, you have 40% less inputs, or 40% larger plants with a third of the input. So when the soil is healthy, the plants are healthy. And it's just like, what you put in is what you get out, Yeah.
Great.
So you have healthy soil, and that's going to help promote the growth of those plants. And there are studies that literally show that. You have a plant conventionally farmed with fertilizer, and you have a plant that's just in a mycorrhizal environment that's formed a relationship with fungus, 40% larger over time, a third of the input as far as fertilizer. So, and we're going to talk a little bit more about fertilizer and how fungus plays into our soils, because it's really, really important going forward that we all learn about soil and how to build our soil. Reproductive structure, that's the mushroom. In most instances, it's a mushroom that we see. There's a lot of times we'll see like mold, right? Mold is actually a fungus, right? And so when we see mold like on bread, and then we see that green, right, or that black that we see, those are actually the spores, right? You didn't see the mold. If you look carefully, the mold is a white mat. That's the hyphae or the mycelium of it. And it forms a very small structure, and then if you were to zoom in, it would kind of look like a mushroom. It's kind of standing up, and then the spores form on the top of it. And so when you see that color, it's actually the mold is already spored. It's already gone to spore at that point.
So you don't eat the bread at that point? Or?
I mean, you can. There's a good chance that, that they do contain mycotoxins. Some of them can make you hallucinate.
Anybody got any white bread?
Yeah. So I don't recommend it. It's probably not a good time. But all right, next slide. Just toast it. Yeah, just cook it down. The only issue with that is that there are some funguses. Aspergillus niger, which is the black mold that we see, contains an aphotoxin. Aphotoxins are persistent even after cooking. Okay, so you have to be very. Yeah, I'm not worried.
What color is the hallucinogenic one again?
I don't know, actually.
And people talk about mushrooms all the time,
Well, those are different mushrooms. Those aren't.
You got them in the bags over there?
Aren't mold. No, I don't have any. I'm sorry. That nature provides, I don't. I can't help you on that one. But if you go and you look in a cow field, you might find the right one. So we had the reproductive strategies, and that's actually, you can see over here on the upper right corner, that's like red mold right there. You see the little tiny structure and on the tip those are spores. Okay. Zygomyces, those are sporangiums. So that's actually what it's talking about right there. That's like the red mold, the Zygomyces. Okay, and then we have Ascomyces, which is this guy right here. That's morel. Yeah. And then you have Vasomyces, which is, I don't know what mushroom that is, but it's a gill mushroom, and it's probably Vasomyces. Makes a basiocarp. The basiocarp is the structure that's actually in the top. It's actually inside the cap of the mushroom, above the spore, above the gill, and that's actually where the spore will actually be produced, is in that basiocarp.
What's the best way to kill that black mold, mildew, and stuff?
Well, it's easily killed. The mold itself is easily killed, but to remove the toxin, you actually have to remove the material. So
I'm talking about if it's growing in your shower, that kind of.
Like if it's growing in your shower, so ammonia and hydrogen peroxide are gonna kill the organism. Bleach has people think bleach does that, but bleach has a tendency to kind of just clean it, but the organism itself can kind of still persist. The best way to do that is to remove the environment. So in
Don't
our
take
shower,
showers anymore.
it's humid, right?
Yeah.
So the best way to do it is to make your shower dry.
Well, that's kind of hard when you shower, at least
Don't
once.
take
Well,
showers anymore.
So that's
So if you use ammonia, what is the mix, ammonia with hydrogen peroxide?
no. You use one or the other.
So you just put hydrogen peroxide right on it?
Hydrogen peroxide will, for the most part, yeah. But if the environment is conducive to mold growth, you're not going to clean up all those spores, and they're going to come back. So, but hydrogen peroxide will destroy the spore, and so will ammonia. It'll actually destroy the spores. Bleach won't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I-
Temperature will actually. High temperatures. Is
I have a grill in my sink, my kitchen sink, and I cook a lot, it gets wet.
Stainless steel.
It's stainless steel, and we get this orange mold that grows on it that I get to scrub it once a week and it's back.
It's coming from your water. Yeah, it's coming from your faucet. That orange slime.
Really? Because I have a
We
salt
have a
system.
soft water system.
Iron bacteria?
But what is it?
Is it iron bacteria?
Yeah, it might be bacteria. Yeah, it may not be a fungus. So, yeah, it's probably coming from your water.
We also have the orange mold in the shower.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Salt system?
yeah. Well, your salt, you probably need to replace the resin in your.
We'll find out last
It's
guys.
probably it's in the system. It's in your. It's coming. It's probably colonizing inside of your water system. That's a whole nother discussion. But but if you really
Does it
want-
make you gain weight? Because
No, can't blame that. Can't blame it on that. Yeah, no, yeah, but it's probably in the water treatment plant that you have in your salt system, actually.
so it might be in the big
It needs to be
resin.
what they call rebedded. So either it needs to be rebuilt, right? Or
Well, I'll ask.
or it needs to be cleaned
Great.
with the right cleaner.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
that's great.
I used to be a contractor. Anyway. All right. So next slide.
Salt system.
Next slide.
Wake up.
Somebody, he's been,
Someone's
do you
gonna
remember that
get-
question?
Someone's gonna get it tonight.
Yeah. Oh. He's gonna buy me dinner. That's what he said. Just different things about mushrooms themselves. The structure of the mushroom is really neat. We have the cap of the mushroom, right, which is actually where sexual reproduction takes place. And I'll talk a little bit more about that too. The gills are just the structure that kind of provides the space where the spores will. And if you were to zoom in like on the gill, it's actually like it looks like a little tube. Like if we were to look at it on our microscope, at the top of that is the structure that makes the spore, and then the spore falls down the tube. The gill is just kind of helping it get out into the environment. And that's why we get these neat looking spore prints. You see the spore print there on the right, and see how it's shaped like the gills, and that's because the gills, when they're put above that, the spores are kind of falling down and out of the bottom of the gill. The ring on a stem, you'll see that, and that's generally there because before the mushroom opened, there was a veil. There's a small piece of skin that kind of attached the cap, and as the mushroom opens, that veil is left on the stipe of the mushroom. That's an identifying factor for that mushroom you were looking for earlier.
The button mushrooms have that little,
So they'll have, like a lot of times you'll get them and they won't even be open.
Right, yeah,
And they'll
but-
have that veil.
Right.
Yes, exactly, absolutely.
Should you eat the gills or not?
Yeah, they're fine.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely fine to eat gills. But you should always cook mushrooms.
No, I know, but I mean,
Okay. Yeah, well, so a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people eat mushrooms raw. They'll eat like button mushroom or white button mushroom raw.
Why not?
So there's two really good reasons why not to eat mushrooms raw. One is mushrooms make their cell walls from a protein called chitin. Okay, chitin is similar. It's the same protein that makes our fingernail. It's also the same protein that shellfish make their shells out of. It's not digestible. Now, there are a few people that have chitinase, an enzyme in their gut that can digest it, but the majority of us don't. Okay, so if you eat mushrooms raw, you're going to gain no benefit from it because you're not going to digest it. It's gonna pass through you, right? So it's gonna be like fiber. That's really the only thing you're gonna get from it.
And when they're cooked, they're so very nutritious.
They are extremely nutritious because a little bit of heat will actually break that protein, that chitin protein open, and then we get the nutrition from inside of the cell of the mushroom. And the other reason is mushrooms live in a very damp environment, kind of like your sink, and they're in direct competition with bacteria and other molds and funguses. So for them to be food safe, you want to cook them, right? So that guarantees that they're food safe. You know, you may not see it, but there may be some bacteria growing on the surface of a mushroom. You know? So that's why we always want to cook mushrooms if we're going to eat them. All right, next slide. All right, some more distinguishing characteristics. We were talking about the stinkhorn before, so we have another type of stinkhorn over there. You can see the veil. And that's actually a really neat mushroom. There's a great documentary called Fantastic Fungi. It's on Netflix, and the gentleman who made that, his name is Louis Schwartzberg. He's the one who produced it, but he spent years doing photography. I think he spent over a decade gathering the photography for this. For Fantastic Fungi, and he has an amazing stop motion or a time lapse of that veil forming as the stinkhorn grows, and then that veil comes out of the bottom of it. And that veil literally just smells bad and is intended to bring mushrooms to it. That mushroom is edible though. That stinkhorn fungus is actually edible. The vulva or the cup looks like an egg. You'll find them sometimes. You'll find, like I said, like that stinkhorn, you'll find it, but there's also amanitas a lot of times will produce this vulva. And amanita Amanita muscaria is a really common mushroom that people know. You've probably seen it in folklore. It's a red cap with the white spots. There's a number of amanitas that grow. Most of them are poisonous. Most of them are very dangerous for us to consume. So we don't consume amanita mushrooms. There's one that grows specifically. It's called Destroying Angel, and it grows with its host is the slash pine, the large pine trees. So it's actually hosted with the slash pines. You ever see a bright white? They're beautiful mushrooms, but it'll be pure white, and the underside will be pure white, and the stipe will be white. And if you dig down, you'll find that vulva, and that's Destroying Angel. And you'll find them around pine trees. Normally we'll find them at the end of summer or the beginning, like in spring or fall when it cools off. They don't like this much heat right now, as warm as it is. But you'll still find them. Don't eat them. You'll only eat it once, I promise. So, mycelium, that's just a picture of the mycelium branching through. A lot of times, if you guys are ever out in your garden or you'll like move leaf debris and you'll see that white network, that's the fungus, that's the mycelium spreading throughout the soil. Next slide. All right, so we can do questions. I've been answering them through it, but anybody have any questions?
So I had a question about, you said a little bit of heat so you can get to the benefits. Is there such a thing then as too much heat where you lose the nutrients?
So obviously, as you cook them, there are some compounds that are gonna cook off. So you're gonna lose that volatility. You're gonna lose them in they're gonna become vaporous. For the most part, though, mushrooms, you want to cook them pretty good to break that down. When I do extractions, so I do extracts of mushrooms. When I do extracts, I do it at 165 degrees. So that's not that hot, really, when you think about it. Like if you're talking about like a saute pan. So the idea with that is that I'm preserving as many of the compounds as that I can, right? But some mushrooms need to be cooked more than others because they do contain compounds that will kind of make like the honey mushroom in particular. The honey mushroom in particular definitely has compounds that if you don't cook them long enough, those will still be present, and they can irritate some people. Some people have no problem with it. Like there are certain mushrooms like that I can't eat, that I have trouble digesting, and I've encountered that more than once. But it's just going to make you sick. So it's not poisonous. We're actually I think on the next slide we're going to talk about how many mushrooms are actually poisonous, because a lot of people are afraid of eating mushrooms. They have mycophobia. So any other questions? No, right now. Yeah.
Yep, and with the, you were talking about the tomatoes, what particular,
So that's oyster mushroom,
Oyster.
actually, yeah. And Roger from the Collier fruit growers, he was gonna put some, he got some literature offline because I told about he was fascinated with that. And he actually, if you guys want, I actually sell my spent blocks. So I make about, these are 5-pound blocks. I make a 10-pound block for my production. I make probably about 100 of them a week. So I make about 100 of these every week that come out of our production that produce mushrooms, but the fungus is still viable to put in your soil. So you can spread that around and kind of try to promote that growth in your soil and create those connections in your soil.
It won't live in sand though, right?
Well, we have a lot of sandy loam here, so for our soils, and if you start adding stuff like this, you'll get more organic material.
can you do that in big pots too?
You could definitely, yeah. And the trick would be to mix it with good potting soil, and then also to continually mulch. So with hardwood mulch.
Where are you located? Is that something you could come out and
Yes,
get? or-
yeah, you can come get them from the farm, yeah. So I'm in Golden Gate Estates, my card's up here, my contact information's on the card. You just have to contact me to come to the farm. It's a residence, so we don't have people coming to the farm all the time. So you just need to, because I'm not always there.
Sure.
I'm Mondays and Wednesdays are better days for me during the week. I'm normally at the farm all day, Monday and Wednesday, and then I do deliveries on Tuesdays and Thursdays right now. And then generally I'm just busting my butt on Friday trying to pick up all the stuff from what's left over from the week.
Are these all spent, did you
No,
say?
these are all ready to go. These are ready to fruit kits. So I'll talk about these when I get done with the thing, but this is a kit you can take home. I call it the micro farm. So this is a micro farm. You take it home and you can actually grow your own mushrooms. Bill did it. He did it. This is actually his lion's mane mushroom growing here. We could talk a little bit about what happened with this guy, but this is actually still viable and actually continue to produce more mushroom for him as well. And you can also see it here. This is it actually fruiting. This came from the farm today. So this is actually what it looks like when we fruit it on our farm.
That's what it's supposed to look like.
This is what it looks like when it gets the right amount of air. So that's really the only difference. You had your humidity was really good. It just wasn't getting enough oxygen. So what was happening is that the mushroom was reaching for oxygen. So that's why when we cut inside this bag is a special bag that's designed for mycology. Okay, this bag is actually made from a special plastic that's polypropylene. It can withstand heat treatment. So when we first put the sawdust in this bag, we'll actually heat treat the sawdust. We'll raise the temperature of the sawdust over 200 degrees. So that kills other competitors. We're killing bacteria, other fungus, and other possible competitors that might be in the sawdust when we get it. And then after that, we'll take it into our sterile conditions, which is in our laboratory. We have a special flow hood. It's a HEPA filtered flow hood. It filters like 99.97% of particulates that are smaller than 0.2 micron out of the air. And then we can open the bag in that environment. And when we open the bag in that environment, it gives us clean, sterile, relatively sterile environment, and then we actually will then put fungus in here. We'll put the fungus we want to grow. That's been grown, that's that spawn that I talked about earlier. So we'll put a little bit of that spawn in here, and then we'll seal the bag. But it has this special filter. This filter is actually made from Tyvek, okay? And this is a 0.02, this is a HEPA filter. So this will only allow gas to exchange out through the filter and not really allow spores or other things to contaminate or come through the filter that would make this environment uninhabitable for the fungus. What happens though is the fungus is like us. The fungus respirates oxygen and exhales carbon dioxide. So inside the bag, carbon dioxide will build up to somewhere in the 10,000 parts per million. So like if we were in here, we would pass out. We wouldn't be able to survive in here. But the fungus survives just fine in there. But as soon as we cut a hole, the fungus knows that there's more oxygen. And that's why the lion's mane comes right out of the hole. Because it says, this is the perfect environment to release my spores. So it wants to give its spores to the wind and to the oxygen. If it was to release spores underground, they wouldn't go anywhere. So in the bag, it thinks it's underground or inside of a tree, right? Here, once we cut the hole, the oxygen, the higher oxygen environment induces the fruiting, and the mushroom will form right in the oxygen environment.
You have to keep the bags in the dark?
No. So that's a misnomer too. So a lot of people think that mushrooms grow in the dark, right? Put me in the basement.
You see them on TV, you see the guys
Right.
harvesting.
So they do, and those mushrooms are the white button mushroom, right? So white button mushroom lacks pigmentation. So just like you and I, when we go in the sun, and our melatonin in our skin changes colors, and we get tan, right? And we get that color. Mushrooms do the same thing, and it's melatonin that's producing those colors and those compounds, and it's from getting a suntan essentially. Mushrooms also produce more vitamin D like we do. So like when we go in the sun and the sun penetrates us, our bodies produce vitamin D. Mushrooms do the same thing. So when they're exposed to UV light, they actually will increase their vitamin D. So we want them to get light because they're healthier for us in the end.
Do you want just indirect light, or do you want?
Indirect light is fine. Direct light will be too much for them. So their host environment obviously is underneath the canopy. So they're at the bottom. They don't need bright full sun. But mushrooms are alive. If you brought mushrooms home from the store, you could put your mushrooms in the sun, and they would actually make more vitamin D. So even after you pick them, you could put them in the sun, and you would actually increase the amount of vitamin D in the mushroom.
Well, but if you took a button mushroom hypothetically and put it in the indirect sun, would it change colors?
It probably won't change color, but it will definitely increase in vitamin D. You know, it may change color because it dries out a little.
Can we ask questions about harvesting? In other words, can you cut that off as
Yeah, I'm gonna
it
show you.
is?
I'm gonna harvest it for you right today because it's ready to go.
Oh, it's so exciting.
That guy's ready to go.
Yeah, well.
All right, so we're gonna do the next couple of slides if nobody else has any more questions. We're getting pretty close to the end of the presentation, I think. All right, so habitat. We were just kind of talking about habitat, right? So habitat, where do we find mushrooms? We're gonna find them in compost, in soils. Are we gonna find them in sandy or clay soils? Probably not. There's not a lot of food for them. Their food is organic matter. Their food is the leaf litter, right? We will find them in leaf litter, right? We find them living on trees. We do find them living on trees, but generally find them on dead trees, right? If you see a mushroom on a living tree, there's a good chance it's parasitic, okay? So we have a really common parasite here to palms. It's called Ganoderma zonata, right? It looks a lot like this reishi mushroom right here. That's because they're in the same genus. They're both Ganoderma. This is Ganoderma, but this mushroom is not parasitic to palms. There's a very specific one that is parasitic to palms, and it causes what's known as brown butt rot. All right, so it's actually killing the palm tree. And if you get that and you try to plant another palm there in the same location, they'll tell you, landscapers will tell you can't do it, you know, because the parasite's going to come back in and it's going to kill the next palm. So it's becoming actually kind of a big problem in the landscape industry in Florida, and it's something that when I have a little bit more time, I want to work on. How can we remediate that soil? How can we remove that fungus from that soil so that we can plant the ornamentals that we like, the palms that we like, and bring them back in. Right now, we'll see it a lot, and I see it a lot now, more so than I ever have before. I see it in I like to hike a lot, so I'll go up to the Crew up in Estero, and I'll see it on palms up there a lot. That being said, the mushroom it's not toxic to us in any way. So just to the host tree.
Is it edible?
This mushroom is more medicinal than it is edible. It's kind of tough and woody, leathery. The Chinese have been using this mushroom for a very, very long time. For about 3,000 years or more, they've been using this mushroom, and they generally make it into a tea or a broth. There have been studies done on reishi that show that it really promotes our T cell and B cell growth in our immune system. So it's able to actually protect us by boosting our immunity. So we generally think of our immune system working as inflammation, but reishi doesn't do that. Reishi doesn't cause inflammation that increases our immune cells. For whatever reason it does, it helps bolster those cells. They've done some studies with people that have immunodeficiencies, specifically HIV, and they're always kind of counting their blood cells. They're always looking at their white blood cell count. When reishi is part of their diet or incorporated in their diet, their white blood cell count levels off. So they actually stop losing less white blood cells, and it actually protects those. And those white blood cells are our T cells and our B cells in our body. Really interesting stuff. And and I can tell you this stuff all day long, but there are studies out there. There are university studies, and we're learning more and more every day about how these mushrooms can be part of our human health. All right, so next slide. So mushrooms can appear in different forms. We see them a lot. You guys probably see them like in your, sometimes you'll see them in the lawn. You can see that ring. I should have brought a petri dish. I didn't bring a petri dish. But it's kind of neat. When I put a piece of mushroom on a petri dish, you'll see it and it expands out in a ring, right? So what you're seeing when you see those mushrooms, the mycelium is expanded in a perfect circle out from the center, and the mushrooms are forming on the margin or on the edge of the mycelium. If you were to dig into the soil and see where the mycelium is, you would see that it doesn't actually extend probably beyond that ring. So that's kind of why we see that ring, that fairy ring of mushrooms. It's actually the shape of the mycelium under our soils. Mushrooms can appear in different shapes. Obviously, we have lion's mane. This doesn't even look like a mushroom to most people. It's an edible tooth fungus. The spines themselves are actually the little tube that the spore is falling out of. This is Ganoderma lucidium. That doesn't have, it has little tiny, if you can kind of, it's really, really hard to see, but you can kind of see there's little tiny holes underneath. And if you kind of tilt it in the right light, this is a polypore, so that's another form. And then we're all kind of familiar with a gilled mushroom. We've seen the gills, those are also another structure that we see. They can also form like a conch. This mushroom generally forms like a conch when in the host environment you'll just see it kind of like a shell coming out of a tree or out of dead wood. Next slide. So we have some common Florida fungus here. There's your red cage over there on the right side, the stinkhorn. This guy right here. There's honey mushroom. That's honey mushroom up there. You have the stinkhorn. This is Coriolus versicolor or Tramyces versicolor. They're
Turkey tail.
turkey tail, absolutely. This is probably the most common mushroom in North America. This mushroom has been studied by the Mayo Clinic and Johns Hopkins for its ability to improve the outcome of chemotherapy by 70%.
Wow, wow.
You eat that mushroom and it literally boosts your immune system and helps your body heal from cancer. It's turkey tail. Turkey tail. And it's probably the most common mushroom. It grows from here to Canada.
Do they make extracts or stuff like that?
I absolutely do.
That's the extract
Do you-
of
It's
that?
one of them, yeah.
Do you
So,
have
and I
those
grow
in a
turkey
kit?
tail. I'm sorry,
The
what?
turkey tail, do you have those in a kit?
I don't have them in a kit. They take a little bit longer to grow. If you would like a turkey tail kit, I can make you one.
I see,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah. The reason, the kits are mushrooms that are gonna be very easy to grow for your first time growing mushroom, okay? Some of these mushrooms, they require very specific environmental conditions, and if you're not paying attention to that, you're not gonna grow a good mushroom. That being said, turkey tail grows from here to Canada, so the environment is good just about everywhere for it.
Do you ever see it when you go walking like in
All
Crow
the
and
time.
stuff?
I see it all the time. Yeah, and there's a couple of different ones. You will see a bright orange one. There's one that's Tramyces cinnabar, and it's similar in structure. There's not a picture up there of it, but looks similar in structure, and then it's actually probably medicinal as well. It's probably making a lot of good compounds as well for us.
Is that a mycorrhizal one?
No, I don't know if turkey tail is mycorrhizal. That's a good question that I'm not 100% sure. They're a good decomposer. You're gonna see them on rotting wood.
I wanna have mycorrhizal all over to improve the property where I am. I'm
Yeah.
organic.
Yeah.
And I was thinking if I can purchase at your farm several kits or whatever and then spread the pieces here and there,
Absolutely.
will it?
Yeah, and we can even make you stuff that you can spread as well. Go ahead.
Okay,
I have the red one in my property, and how do you use the turkey tail, the red one, how do you use it? It's
The turkey tail or Ganoderma like this. This one? Is that the one you're talking about? Or
No,
this
it's
one?
very bright, it's very bright,
Yeah, Is it a conch shaped
Yes.
mushroom? Okay. You seeing it on palms or are you seeing it on
Deadwood.
on deadwood? Okay. So send me a picture of it and I can identify a little more as far as it's already there on your property. So it's already in your soils and growing. If you're seeing the mushroom, it's already there. Okay.
How do you use it?
What you mean as far as how can you extract it?
No, how can you?
Can you eat it? Consume it?
Yeah,
Consume it. So really with those mushrooms, if it's Ganoderma, if it's like that, you can boil it and make it into a tea or a broth. So you can add it to soups. If you make it as a tea, it's slightly bitter. So just to know that. I also have it ground into a powder that I sell as the intended use as a tea or a broth.
If you put it in soup as a mushroom, can you eat the actual mushroom itself?
It's tough. But even after boiling it for a long time, it's very tough. I mean, as far as palatability, it's not
So
desirable.
you just want you want the medicinal.
Right. So you're extracting the medicinal compounds. And hot water, believe it or not, a lot of people think that they're like, oh, there's got to be some other magic to extracting it. Hot water is incredible at gathering the compounds that come right out of the mushroom. So water is the universal solvent. We're all made of water. Everything on Earth that survives uses water. It's incredibly powerful. Now the amount of time of extraction, can vary. How strong that extraction is. So if you just brew it like you brew tea, you're not going to get as strong of extraction. With reishi, I like to boil it for just a few minutes to get a better extract of it. That's actually that one at the top. That's Zonatum growing up there. That's the one that I was talking about. That's a parasite to palms, and then again Earth Star down there, which is the puffball, the one that wasn't a fungus, but it actually is a fungus.
Shouldn't throw them away anymore then. They're,
Well, I don't eat them.
no, but I mean, they were all over my yard, and I was throwing them away.
Kept pulling them out, but you're not. So you can pull the mushroom out all you want. You're just spreading the spores around.
Yeah.
You said something that I which to clear my mind. You said that the parasitic mushrooms are there for the trees and they kill the trees, right?
If it's Zonatum, yes.
So
Generally, if you see a mushroom on a living tree, for the most part, it's probably going to be a parasite. That doesn't mean it is, but a lot of them are.
So what is the difference between that one? That one is specifically on the tree, on the surface of the tree, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the mushroom. We're going to see the mushroom on the tree, but the fungus itself is inside. The fungus is inside the tree, and it's in the soil beneath the tree.
So by the time you see the mushrooms.
So what about the ones that are outside of the tree, like on the surrounding area?
On the ground,
On the ground.
generally. So, like, if it's the same mushroom, it may be growing on buried wood or a root. So it may be growing on something else that's in the soil, if it's the same species, right? But if it's a different mushroom, it could be beneficial, it could be mycorrhizal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So by the time you see the mushroom on the outside of the tree, it's
By the time you see the mushroom on the outside of the tree, you're probably going to see the tree starting to die. Yeah, it's already too late.
all right. I didn't realize it's all throughout the whole tree then.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So right now, like as you can see, the fungus is all like the white is all throughout here, but we don't see any mushrooms, right? Imagine if this was bark on a tree, not a plastic bag that we could see through, we wouldn't see it. So the fungus is so small, it's able to grow right through we were talking about xylem and the folium, whatever. The trees are like a straw. They're actually hollow. We don't see it, but the fungus is able. It's so small, it can just grow right through the tree. So, and that's what it does. I mean, that's its point. That's its purpose. That's where it lives. Crafton.
One of your early slides showed a mycelium that had made a noose and caught a nematode.
Yeah, and that is that was oyster mushroom or platris.
Could you come back to that slide again?
Yeah, I can go back. You're gonna go way back. Keep going. Right there. Oh, no, go one. Go back. Go back. Right there.
Right there.
There. Yep, that's it right there. So that's actually the fungus growing over, and this is the roundworm, the nematode. This is the nematode here, this long structure, and this is the fungus, that's the hyphae, or mycelium, and that's it actually wrapping around the nematode and consuming it. So when your soil's healthy, that'll happen. The nematodes will get eaten by the Platyrus fungus.
Could mushrooms actually make a difference in controlling nematodes?
Absolutely, yeah. But it wouldn't be like we would apply it like we would like a chemical.
It would be like you just have a good community.
You need to build the soil, right? Exactly. You have to have that soil, you know. And here we have a lot of sandy soils that don't have organic structure that will support that. So we have to build that, and we can build that by putting like the spent mushroom blocks or mushroom compost, and then also layering with more organic material that will continue to feed that. And over time, that will become the root zone for those plants. You can do it in a pot. It'd be a lot easier to make your soil in a potted plant and pot it up like that. But you do have to add, you're gonna have to continually mulch. You're gonna have to keep mulching and keep the moisture to protect the fungus to keep growing in there. But it's that's the way these things evolve. They evolve together to produce green plants and soil. Go back, keep going. Yeah. Okay, there you go. All right, so this talks about the different habitats that we find fungus in. So like we were talking about, the sandy pine habitat is going to be xeric. It's where it's drier. So you're not going to find, you're going to find different mushrooms in there. You're not going to find a ton of mycorrhizal. In our wetlands, in our oak hammocks here in Florida, that's where you're going to find the most mushrooms. That's where you're going to find the most fungus, because it's going to have the most organic matter, and it's going to have the conditions that are going to give rise to that environment. It's going to really provide for them. Generally sandy soils aren't going to have as much organic material that's going to give the host environment to keep the fungus growing. We have grasslands and prairies here, and that can be both. You're gonna see drier areas and prairies, and you're gonna have different plants that are growing there, and some of them are gonna be growing with it, and some are gonna be growing without it. And you're gonna have like our cypress domes or our wetlands. Some of those environments are gonna be too wet, and they're gonna exclude fungus, but also they're going to be in the drier times of the year, they're going to be conducive to promoting that fungal growth. Next slide. All right, so can I eat it? Short answer, no.
Only once.
You can always. Yep, you can definitely eat it once. The long answer is maybe, right? So we have a saying: there are bold mushroom hunters and there are old mushroom hunters. There are no bold old mushroom hunters. So if you don't know what it is, don't eat it. All right. So contact your local experts. Refrain from eating anything that's wild foraged, unless you're 100% sure. You know, if you bring me with you, there's a good chance I'll be 100% sure this is edible mushroom.
You do any like foraging things where you take people out?
So yeah, I want to get into doing that. We're definitely going to start doing some of that.
Like a mushroom tour or something?
Right. I do have my card, and my phone number is on the card. That is my cell phone. If you take pictures of the mushrooms and you send them to me, the most important part for me is I need to see the cap of the mushroom. I need to see the top. I need to see the underside and the stem, like where the stem attaches in the cap. And I also need to see the environment. It's good to be able to see the environment around it. Some mushrooms I don't know, so it can be harder for me to identify them.
You taste them, you let us know.
Well, you can always taste mushrooms. That's actually an interesting thing. You can taste a poisonous mushroom. Just don't eat it. Don't swallow it. You can taste it, but don't swallow
Really?
it. Yeah. So, but I won't recommend that either.
Sounds like another thing I wanted to.
Right.
I got a lot of other things I wanted
So
to.
Return customers, right?
What?
Want return customers.
I want return customers. All the mushrooms I grow, I guarantee are edible. So I won't feed anybody poison mushroom, I promise. That would really kind of put a hamper on my business. Yeah, I like the return customer. All right, next slide. All right, oh, did we get back to the beginning?
Yep.
No, I thought there was one more. Oh, yeah.
Maybe it's just a repeat.
Yeah, okay, it was a repeated slide. I thought, is there one more? No, go back. Okay, so IFAS, University of Florida IFAS Extension, David Outerbridge. He is the Lee County, he manages all the agents up there. He's the one that put together this slideshow. Great resource. Reach out to them. They really know a lot, and they're helpful. And if they don't know, they'll call me. Some really neat, some neat books we have here. Common Florida Mushrooms, that was written by a Florida mycologist, James Kyborough. That's a pretty good book. It's not my favorite for identifying them. There you go, that's a good book probably. I haven't read that one, but can be helpful.
There's one from 1943.
So that's probably a really good book. And that one says common edible mushrooms, so take a look.
And it says it cost $2.50.
Well, that was expensive.
I found it
Think
in
about
the
that.
thrift
In
shop.
1943, think of how expensive that was.
1943.
43. So, let's see, we have a bunch of different,
We get wonderful things in
so here, but this says edible, but to be avoided.
Yeah.
So that means you could eat it, but don't. Right? So Lapiola, this is green gill, right? Okay, so here, Lapiola. So this we get a you guys probably seen these mushrooms in your yard, big parasol mushroom,
Yes.
right? Okay. Yeah, and you look at the bottom of them, they'll be pure white when they first come out, and then they'll turn kind of like a dingy green color.
They'll spore print green.
Green. So
And they'll
don't
make
eat
you
that.
sick. They'll give you
Do not eat that mushroom. That mushroom's common name is the vomiter.
They used to say back in folk medicine, if you can make a little pill out of it and swallow it, you'll have diarrhea and you'll clean yourself out.
So that's probably a great folk medicine, but I don't recommend it. I
And I've
really
had
don't.
more people tell me, hey, I got a bunch of mushrooms, where'd you come from?
Yeah, if you don't know what they are, don't eat them. There are a lot of parasol mushrooms.
Better off the prunes.
There's another one that appears similar that makes a pink spore. Okay, it's called deer mushroom. And that's the way you have to tell the difference because they look really similar,
Yeah, I've
right?
not seen that one.
Okay, well you will sometimes. You'll see them in the same habitat too. That mushroom's edible. Is it worth eating? Not really. I've eaten it a few times. Not great.
What about those mushrooms that like grows out of the mulch and then like they're very fragile and skinny and
So those are probably Coronopus. Without seeing it, I can't say 100% what mushroom it is. That mushroom is also known as inky cap. Not poisonous. Is it worth eating? No, not really.
but if you does it tell you that your soil is gonna be good?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we see mushrooms growing in our soils, for the most part, they're doing the job that they're meant to do, which is break down lignum and cellulose and create new soils. And that fungus being in the soil provides a house. And this is something we were talking about, I was going to talk about earlier about soil. When we have fungal dominant soils, when we have soils that are filled with fungus, we have this house for bacteria, right? So we have special bacteria that are nitrifying, right? So we talk about adding nitrogen or fertilizer to our soils. Well, bacteria is actually capable of doing that. We have these nitrifying bacteria that are capable of taking nitrogen from our atmosphere and fixing it into the right form of nitrogen for green plants. So when fungus is dominating in the soil, that bacteria has a place to live, okay? And that's important. When we have really, really healthy soils, we have 100 parts fungus to 1 part bacteria, all right? So that's how we can quantify how healthy our soils are. Old growth forests, forests that have been in place for a long time have these huge fungal networks. They're actually little houses for this nitrifying bacteria, and that's where these plants are getting their nitrogen. They're getting it from this bacteria. That bacteria is also present in the red wiggler worm gut. Right? So you ever heard of worm castings? All right. So worm castings are awesome, right? Not because they're full of nitrogen, because they're full of this bacteria, right? When we put this bacteria into our soils and we create the right environment for fungus and this bacteria to survive, they will add nitrogen directly to the soil to feed our plants. I grow red wiggler worms on mushroom compost. I take the spent mushroom blocks and I feed them to my red wiggler worms to make worm castings. And then you mix that together with this and with the castings, and you have far less inputs and you have bigger and healthier plants. Soil's so important.
Any benefits to eating dry mushrooms?
Any benefit to eating dry mushrooms?
Right.
Absolutely.
I see them in the Asian stores and in Costco also they sell.
Sure, yeah,
Porcini's.
I dry mushrooms a lot. It's a great way to preserve mushrooms, especially if you have a lot of mushrooms. Mushrooms that have been dried have a shelf life of almost 3 years.
Wow.
So as long as they're kept dry, right? If they start to get wet, then they're gonna mold or they're gonna
Can you
grow.
freeze dry them?
You absolutely can. Freeze drying is an incredibly way to preserve anything. Freeze drying is, the reason freeze drying is so good is that it preserves almost all nutrients when you do freeze drying, as opposed to heat drying. You are gonna destroy some of the compounds when you do heat drying.
When you have
But-
dried mushrooms, how do you fix them? Do you have to hydrate them again?
Generally, I hydrate them. I don't like personally, dried mushrooms don't saute well. Right? So if you like sauteed mushrooms or roasted mushrooms, dry mushrooms don't do that. They're better like in soups or in broths. And you're gonna get the benefit and you're gonna get the umami. Umami is flavor. Umami is what we really are after with mushrooms. Mushrooms are the masters of umami. They add that flavor, that deep flavor that you can't get in any other.
I use mushroom powder and cook it.
Yeah, absolutely. I have mushroom powder, and that's what I recommend you do with it. I take mushroom powder and I put it in, like if I make breaded fish or chicken, if I want to make like fried chicken, I put mushroom powder in with the breading, and that adds a really another level, a deep level of flavor. It's excellent, and it's good for you. I'm sorry.
Is seaweed some type of fungi?
Seaweed?
Yes.
No, seaweed is a green plant. Seaweed, yeah, but it does have a lot of umami as well.
Oh.
Yeah, and it contains a lot of phytonutrients. Seaweed is actually really, really good for us too.
Sushi.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's good. Nori. Excellent. Do you have a question? I'm sorry. What? Portobello mushrooms? So portobello mushrooms are good. They're growing. You know, they're growing in abundance. Portobello mushroom is a little different than the mushroom we grow. The mushrooms I'm growing are first decomposers. So they're doing first decomposition. The fungus is doing first decomposition of lignin and cellulose. Portobello mushrooms are actually a secondary decomposer. They're grown on compost. So something else is going to decompose it a little bit, and then the portobello mushroom is going to come in there and be able to grow.
What about the nutrition value compared to the?
You know, that's there's a lot of there's different schools of thought out there. That mushroom in particular does create a compound that's not beneficial to us. Portobello. So portobello cremini, portobello baby bella, the little white button mushroom, they're actually all the same mushroom. Okay, it's just dependent upon the environment that they're growing in. The portobello is obviously selected to be a bigger cap. They've genetically selected it, the variety. Those mushrooms, if you don't cook them, you won't destroy that compound. So eating them raw is actually not good at all. Cooking them does destroy the compound that can be not beneficial to our health. There are polysaccharides and beta-glucans that are in them that are beneficial to our health. I would say if you had the choice between eating portobello mushroom and shiitake mushroom, I would eat shiitake every day of the week. So
Do you do shiitake?
I do grow shiitakes. Yeah, and shiitake takes me 12 weeks to grow. So shiitake is actually one of the longest growing for me. So the thing about it for me is space. So when I grow mushrooms, I make these bags, and to grow 40 pounds of shiitakes, I have to make basically 20 of those bags every week, and then they have to sit for 12 weeks. So if you come to the farm, I'll show you. But I have probably 6 shells full of shiitakes, and then I have maybe, well, and then I have like 3 shelves full of oyster, because they don't take as long to grow. So it just takes up space. Yeah. Any other questions?
The amount of nutrition is the difference, the main difference, is that right?
The compounds that are in them. So each fungus is going to make different compounds, and we can talk a little bit more about that. Like lion's mane in particular, lion's mane has had some study done on it. Lion's mane contains compounds that can promote nerve growth factor. What that means is that it can help our nerve endings and our brain stems regrow, actually promote the growth of our nerve endings. It also contains a compound called ergothioneine. Ergothioneine is part of our ATP process. Does anybody know what ATP is? ATP, right. So what that is our cells, inside our cells there's these little engines, they're called mitochondria, okay? These mitochondria make the power for our cells, they make the sugar for our cells. Ergothioneine supports that process. So it's really beneficial to our cellular health. And these things are all things that we've been studying them for a few years, but we're really, as far as like on the frontier of science, like we're really just starting to find out what all this stuff means. All the stuff that I know, I haven't done any of these studies, I've just read them.
Would that be beneficial to athletic performance, the ATP enhancement?
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's another compound from another mushroom called cordyceps, which it's called cordycepin. And that's actually, again, boosting that ATP process. So yes, for sure.
How long do powdered mushrooms last?
So dried and powdered mushrooms, at least 3 years, roughly, the shelf life. They have a shelf life of about 3 years.
And then what happens, even if it's like sealed?
Yeah, I mean, if it's really realistically, probably damn near indefinitely. But we have to quantify that. And I'm actually working right now. I make my extracts and my tinctures, and I tell people that they should use them within 1 year. But I just reached out to a lab actually last week, and I'm going to be sending my stuff off to a lab and do a shelf stability.
So what, did they just lose their nutrient value?
Yeah. I mean, the stuff, it just degrades, it oxidizes. So we lose benefit as those compounds change, and they degrade over time.
Spice is the same thing.
Yeah. And it's they're phytochemicals, and those compounds, they're going to degrade over time.
So, but lion's mane, if you got some of the lion's mane, could you mix that with regular coffee, or is it? How do you
Yeah, so that's actually, I do that as well. So I dry the lion's mane, and then I mix the dried mushroom fruit body with the coffee. And what you're doing when you make coffee is you're making an extract of coffee. So if the mushroom's in there, you're making an extract of the mushroom at the same time. So I have a lot of people that actually really like that. And they'll make their coffee, and it's blended with lion's mane. I sell both the powder, and I also sell lion's mane blended with organic coffee. So it's an easy way to consume the mushroom every day. And that's the trick to lion's mane and a lot of these mushrooms is these compounds are needed in our bodies every day. They recommend that you eat about 300 grams, which is not a lot of wet mushroom actually, a week.
How much is that?
It's really
2/3 of a
not
pound.
much. It's,
2/3 of a pound.
Yeah, it's very little.
2/3 of a pound.
Yeah, if you bake, you know about grams. So
Yeah.
500 grams is a pound.
500 grams is a pound?
About that, yeah.
Okay,
Give or take
so-
a couple grams.
So they say 300 grams of wet mushroom is good for your diet for a week. So.
Is it cost effective to buy the kits, or is it better to buy the fruits already?
Well, so if you're willing to take care of the kit will produce between 1.5 to 2 pounds of mushroom in the first flush, meaning the first time it makes mushrooms. You'll get roughly a pound and a half to 2 pounds of mushrooms. You do a good job taking care of it. Just like growing anything else, right? So the kit's $25, and I sell the fresh mushroom for $25 a pound. So you can do the math there.
Kit.
If you want, if you're willing to take care of it. For me, it's the energy and effort that that go into producing the mushroom, harvesting the mushroom, packing the mushroom, delivering the mushrooms.
What is it to take care of a kit?
So the kits, I have an instruction sheet that comes with the kit when you buy the kit. I only brought 10 kits tonight. I didn't realize how many people were gonna be here. But you guys can always reach out to me, and I make them every week, basically. So the kit is gonna, on the instruction sheet, it's gonna give you some idea on what to do with the kit. What you're gonna do is you're gonna need to provide a host environment. The host environment is, yeah, that one, he did a great job with humidity. So the humidity is excellent in there. The problem with that one is that we didn't get enough oxygen.
So you need to put holes on it.
Holes, or just open it and fan it, just get it some more air. And really, humidity is very important for the initial growth. So once the mushroom like this, like once it starts to grow, like as a baby mushroom, here in Florida in the summertime, our back porches are actually, there's enough humidity outside to continue to grow. Non-direct sunlight in the shade. If you have a really windy porch, it may be a little drier. If you have a fan, it may be kind of dry out, but you can easily just spray them. So the first time I grew mushrooms, I bought a kit. The kit I bought was called Back to the Roots. It was a little tiny kit. It was about a pound. The whole kit was a pound, and it made about a quarter pound of mushrooms. I paid $20 for that kit. So this is a 5-pound block, right? This kit is gonna make 3 pounds of mushrooms in the, or more. If you take care of it, it could make up to 5 pounds of mushrooms or more if you take care of the kit.
So if you harvest the first batch of mushrooms.
So what you do is you'll harvest it, and then you'll put in the humidity, right? So on the instruction it shows you how to make a humidity tent. So you can make a tent like he did with the box, or you can do it, I recommend doing it with a plastic bag. It's easy. You can just take a plastic bag and put it over the kit, and if you see condensation inside the bag, the humidity is good. If you don't see condensation inside the bag, you need to spray or add some water to the bag. I recommend using distilled water because it's not going to bring any other pathogens or other bacteria from outside sources.
So do you poke a hole in it, or you cut the top off?
As far as the bag?
To harvest.
To harvest? No, to do the kit, you're gonna cut a little hole, you're gonna push the air out, okay? And then you're gonna fold the bag down, and then what you'll do is what I normally do is I'll cut it, I'll fold the bag down, I'll flip it over like this, I'm trying to break it in there, and then I'll cut a X. I like to do one side just because it's easier for me to see it, but you could cut X's all the way around the bag. But I just cut 2 X's for lion's mane. I'll cut 2 X's, and the mushrooms will come out of that 2 X's.
Like that.
But yeah, like that, just like that. And then this bag wasn't raised in a humidity tent. This bag was raised in a humid environment.
Yeah.
So I have like an entire grow room, a 40-foot shipping container that I modified. That's humid and cool. So it's 95% humidity in there all the time.
Oh boy.
So it doesn't ever get dried out in there, okay? And then the mushroom will form in that environment. And then actually to harvest the lion's mane, it's actually really easy. We just grab the mushroom like this, and we literally will pull it off of the block.
You
That's
twist
it.
it?
Yeah, just gave it a little twist. And you can see the sawdust that remains on the mushroom, right? And what you'll do to do the second fruiting is you'll just control the humidity again. And it'll come right out of the same hole because, again, it's looking for oxygen. So, and when you cut the bag, when you cut the X, we want to cut into the substrate a little bit. That damaging of the substrate, it kind of initiates the growth of the mushroom. It causes the fungus to kind of try to regrow over where we damaged.
So when you cut the X, you have to put the bag around it.
We put another bag over top of
Okay.
it. Yeah. So so like if I don't know if I don't have a bag.
On top of mine, that is a big plastic bag.
This is a big plastic bag. So on the instructions it says to use wood skewers to support the bag, right? So you can just take some skewers and you can just poke them right into the substrate, and then you put the bag over the top like this over it. Okay, and it would prop it up like that. I recommend maybe put it on a plate or something because you're gonna have moisture in there, right? And we're gonna prop that up, and as long as you see condensation on this part of the bag or in the bag, it's humid enough. once the mushroom starts to form, you'll see it'll start to come out. It'll be like smooth and white and round for the lion's mane. For the oyster, it'll look like little pins. It'll look like little pinheads.
It gets the size of a regular oyster mushroom though, right?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. So, but the mushroom, once you start to see those little pins, that's the most crucial stage. That's the most important part. If they dry out at that point, humidity is most important at that point. If they dry out at that point, they'll give up.
So,
Okay? So you have to keep the humidity up for that first 2 or 3 days that you see that, but then you can kind of uncover, you can put it on the back porch in Florida here, because we have enough humidity outside. If it's indoors, if you're inside, your air conditioning is always pulling humidity out. So your indoor humidity is probably in the 70% range, outdoor humidity is in the 80.
so if I get one of those bags tonight, what do? Do you cut it now or you wait?
Well, it depends. You want to fruit it right now?
How long can you wait before it fruits?
You can put it in the refrigerator and wait 6 months.
All right, because I'm going away, so I
So you
didn't.
could buy the kit and you could put it in your refrigerator and then take it out, a couple weeks later. It's gonna take a little, when you get it out of the fridge, it's gonna take 2 or 3 days for it to warm back up and acclimate, but it'll fruit pretty much right after that.
So you take it, then you cut the X's. You can do that now if you wanted to.
If you're gonna put it in the fridge, I wouldn't recommend
No, I'm
that.
saying if you don't do the fridge, you want to fruit now.
If you want to fruit right now, if you want to have lion's mane like the end of next week, you could, like every week I take bags out, I cut X's in them, and then the end of the following week I'm harvesting mushrooms.
Oh, that's great.
So they grow
What's wrong
fast.
with that cell? And how can you modify it?
This one, just more fresh air exchange. So either once you start to see the mushroom form, open it and fan it more, or give it more oxygen.
Can you take that out and show us what it looks like?
Sure, I guess. Can I take it out?
Sure.
It's not
Not
mine.
everybody's gonna have the chance afterwards to come running over
Yeah,
there.
it's not mine, so I just want to be careful here. So you can see that the mushroom has continued to grow. You see, I mean, and this has been growing for a long time, right? How long did you say?
I got it.
Couple of weeks,
At that
right?
meeting, 2 months.
2 months. Wow. So what I would do with this guy is I would pull all this off of here, and this block still has a bit of weight. It'll actually form mushrooms again. Okay, so you can pull all the mushroom off.
Can that be edible, the stuff that's on there now?
Yeah, because of its age, it might be a little bit bitter. The lion's mane, the older the mushroom gets, it kind of can develop a bit of a bitter flavor. But that doesn't mean it's not medicinally valuable. So you can still take all this mushroom and dry it. He's got a little bit of fungus growing over here that's not lion's mane over here. Something else that's growing, that's parasitizing the mushroom at this point. And that's just because of the length of time. But you can see where like there was more fresh air exchange and it formed the spines, just like this mushroom did. You can see the spines on this mushroom. And we can pass that around, you guys can check it out.
Don't put it in your bag, Madeline.
Besides stir frying,
So lion's mane's actually really good. I like to make lion's mane crab cakes. So that's a really good recipe where you take the lion's mane and you make a crab cake out of it.
So it's like stir frying it?
Yeah, you can stir fry it. With lion's mane, I just kind of pull it apart, just tear it apart.
And saute it?
Yeah, and saute it, or make like lion's mane crab cakes, because it's kind of seafoody, the texture. Some people like it, some people don't. I've had some people that love lion's mane, and I've had other people that are like, I could leave it,
How about when you make it from coffee, you have to dry that out?
So after I harvest the fruit body, I'll dehydrate it, and then I grind it
Yes,
into a powder.
but I'm saying it's got that cool air smell to
Do
it.
you have like a dehydrator?
Yeah, I have a big dehydrator. Yeah. So for the coffee, I grind it, and it looks like this.
Yeah, I saw one last time, very good.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so this, this is a very interesting fact about mushrooms, right? So this little bag of powder here, which is actually 42 grams of mushroom, which is roughly 42 servings, right? Was once, was 10 times this amount in weight. So it was over 420 grams of mushroom before it was like that. That means it was like 3 or 4 pounds of mushroom that's in this bag.
How much you put in that coffee?
1 gram. 1 gram. 1 tablespoon, roughly.
So you have the powder by itself?
Yes, this is just the powder. Yeah, this is
So,
just lion's mane powder.
If you have it in powder form, and then you put it in your smoothie, how much?
Just 1 gram.
which is a tablespoon?
Yeah, roughly. Right around.
Tablespoon of.
Well, you know, tablespoon is a terrible measurement. So if you want to be accurate, it'd be 1 gram. So if you want to weigh it, but roughly a tablespoon.
Tablespoon.
Yeah, or a teaspoon. Is that what it says?
Uh,
1 teaspoon. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
One
that's
teaspoon.
even probably more than.
1 teaspoon would be about 1.
That's a lot.
We have too much over.
Yes, yes.
I
You
mean,
got-
you ate this whole bag, your stomach might not feel great.
You buy a scale,
it's not
Amazon
gonna
sells
fit.
them, they're about $15. It starts
Yeah.
from 1 gram to about
Yeah, grams.
15 grams.
I'm
That's
sorry.
it.
Yeah, so you can brew it
don't use
into a tea.
spoons.
Yeah, the mushroom, like the fruit body is not gonna dissolve in a tea, but you can brew it like a tea, no problem, absolutely. And I actually do every day. So I put 1 teaspoon of this, I put 1 teaspoon of the reishi, and I do 1 teaspoon of turkey tail, and I brew a tea every morning. And then I actually mix a little cacao and maca and some other minerals, Arabic minerals in there. And that's my coffee. I don't drink coffee. I do that every day.
Anybody
And that's for
want
immunity. I do it for immune health. I do it for energy. So this is the coffee here. You bought the coffee where it's blended.
Coffee.
Yeah. So this is actually organic coffee blended with. You can see the lion's mane in there. That's blended in
You
there.
sell that?
Yep.
How
And
much is that package?
it's $15. It's $15,
Okay.
and it's 100 grams of coffee. So it's probably, I don't know, 1 to 2 tablespoons per cup is what depending upon how strong you like your coffee. What would you say? How many cups of coffee this was, George? How much?
I haven't finished it yet.
Oh, you haven't finished it yet?
But I
Okay.
want to get some of the powder tonight.
Yeah, for sure. And then you can mix it with any coffee you like, or you can make it any other.
How much is the powder?
The powder is $30 for the bag. So this is 42 servings. So it's 42 servings, right? Right. So this coffee, this is 100 grams of coffee with 15 grams of mushroom in it, and this is 42 servings. So it's a huge.
42 servings, you put your own coffee.
You just put one teaspoon. 1 teaspoon per cup, roughly.
Oh, you just.
But you don't put it in the coffee, you put it in with the grounds.
Okay.
Because you're making an extract. You're brewing it like tea, right? And it should say that on here. I'm pretty sure it does. You can also add it to smoothies. You can consume this. This is mushroom. You can consume it. So.
Do you produce it?
Yeah. Oh no, I grow any product I have that has mushrooms in it. I grew the mushroom. Okay. I don't buy mushrooms from other people and make mushroom products. I am a mushroom farmer. You can come to my farm and see where we grow mushrooms and how we grow them.
So the
Anytime
first one is an extract of what?
Yes.
So what? I'm sorry. What?
The one on your right hand.
This is just powder. This is just the mushroom, that lion's mane mushroom that's going around, dried and powdered. Okay? But then I also sell it as an extract, so you don't have to do that part. You don't want to do the extraction part. I sell them as an extract. So I make them into, this is a hot water extraction that has been made that's balanced with vegetable glycerin. So this makes a shelf-stable extract. So this is a dropper. In here, this is a 30 milliliter bottle. It's 1 dropper per day. It's about a 750 milligram dose, roughly. I put 75 grams of dry mushroom in 1,000 liters, and then I extract this at 165 degrees. It takes over a day to make the extraction. And then this is a medicinal extract. So this one is reishi, but this is the reishi mushroom. I also do it with lion's mane, and I also do it with turkey tail, and I also do it with shiitake. The reason I do it with the different mushrooms is they all kind of have different benefits. Shiitake is a really powerful mushroom for our immune system and our liver. It really promotes our liver function. In Japan, since 1980, you guys are going to hate this. In Japan, since 1980, they've been making extracts of shiitake that can reverse cirrhosis, fatty liver disease. It can actually reverse cirrhosis of the liver. Wow. They've known this since 1980. All right?
Where are we?
42 years.
So you're saying I can drink myself and have
Drink
a
yourself to death and eat
Just a couple of drops.
Eat as many shiitakes as you want, because shiitake is incredibly powerful for our liver and our immune system. So shiitake is really, really good for that. I don't recommend drinking alcohol. Alcohol causes 11 different types of cancer, and we know that. just my opinion.
Yeah.
But wine isn't alcohol, though. Wine is tasty. It's fruit.
Well,
It's fruit.
It's probably good for you. There's definitely, I think there's resveratrol in red wine, so red wine is
My
definitely.
grandfather lived to over 100 years old,
And he
and
probably-
he said it was the wine that kept his blood rich.
I think it was. I believe 100% in that. But I personally, I don't consume alcohol. Turkey tail, Termices, Coriolis, this Coriolis versicolor, Termices versicolor. Depends upon who you ask. They're doing DNA testing. Names are changing a lot with fungus. So that's the scientific name. This is turkey tail mushroom. That's the common name. One of the most abundant mushrooms in North America. This is the mushroom that Johns Hopkins and the Mayo Clinic have both studied in conjunction with conventional chemotherapy. I'm not saying do this instead of your cancer therapy, but they say, if they say this works with cancer therapy, why not take it without it, right? So this mushroom contains powerful compounds that are boosting our immune system. They're protecting our cellular health, and they're protecting us overall. Lion's mane, again, lion's mane contains compounds that have been shown to promote nerve growth factor. Also ergothioneine that supports the ATP process in our mitochondria. A lot of people take lion's mane for focus and attention. It's been shown to provide symptom relief in people with neurodegenerative disorders, Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, MS. All people find symptom relief when consuming lion's mane regularly. Okay?
Do you have to build up like a serum level?
I would imagine that's, I'm not a doctor.
No, because there are medications that takes like 2 to 3 weeks before they really start to kick in.
Yeah, so it's consuming it regularly.
Yeah, correct.
Is the point, right? So it's getting it in our diet. And this is an easy way to get in your diet every day because it's already extracted, it's ready to go. This is mixed with vegetable glycerin, okay? Vegetable glycerin provides a shelf stability in this. So what that means is that this does not need to be refrigerated, okay? Otherwise it would go bad, okay? So and the extraction is done with the glycerin and the water at the same time. And it's all raised to the pasteurization temperature of 165 degrees.
So if you refrigerate it, does that help the shelf life or it doesn't make
Yes,
okay.
it absolutely would, because it would reduce oxidation on it.
So what's the difference between that and powder?
It's extracted. So the powder is not extracted. So you would need to make an extraction or do the extraction.
I'm not talking about the benefits. What's the difference between powder and that?
The benefits, they're gonna be similar. They're gonna be very similar.
So it's a matter of
Preparation.
No, it's a matter of like which one's your preference. Is that what?
But it's also a matter of preparation. So if you want to take the time to use the powder and make an extract from it, you see what I'm saying? This is already bioavailable. You just take a dropper full and you can put it in.
The powder's not bioavailable?
Not as readily bioavailable as this because it's been extracted. So like the powder you would make a tea or a broth from, or you would brew it in your coffee, which is going to make an extract.
Oh,
You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
Yeah, the
So,
powder.
I have mushroom powders already.
So
I put it in a smoothie.
Okay, so you have to look at the powder
Yeah.
and look and see if it's an extracted powder or if it's just mycelium or fruit body. So if it's just mycelium or fruit body, it's going to have to go through your digestion, which is not bad. I mean, it's going to be good. It's just like eating mushroom, right? But if it's already extracted, then it's going to be more bioavailable, right? Okay. So if you want to send me, you can send me a picture of the product you're taking. I can let you know if it's really good or what it is. Okay.
Yeah, it's a combination of different mushrooms.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of them in the
There
market
are
now.
like 12 to 14 different mushrooms in
Yeah.
there, like reishi and all that.
Yeah, and that stuff's great. And
Just trying to help.
I recommend
Thank you.
getting that in your diet. If you can get it that way and get it in your diet, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Sorry, go ahead.
Do you make your extracts with just the fruiting body, or do you also like?
So my
incorporate
extracts are all
mycelium?
fruit body right now.
Okay.
I'm working on creating a mycelium product as well. And there's a lot of debate out there.
No.
So there's a huge thing where people are talking about the difference between mycelium and fruit body. There's a lot of people that think fruit body is the only thing that can be beneficial. I have a huge argument for that. Mycelium does 99% of the growth and digestion. So the mycelium is going to create more compounds than the fruit body. The mushroom is a specific structure that does sexual reproduction. We didn't get into that, but I could get into that some more. But fungus in the soil is haploid. So the spore is haploid, it has only half the genetic material. When they find each other, the mycelium find each other in the soil, they clamp onto each other and they exchange genetic information, but they don't, at that time, the genetic information doesn't combine together. So we have a single cell that's called diploid. What that means is that we have a cell that has two nucleuses, okay? There's actually two types of genetic material in that cell. Only in the mushroom do they actually exchange genetic information and form a zygote, form the next generation. Okay, that's the only time it becomes, and then immediately it undergoes mitosis and becomes haploid again.
So is that the stem and the cap, or just the cap, or?
Just in the cap, in a very specific structure in Basomyces, it's called a basiocarp. It's in the very top of the mushroom, right above where the spore actually falls out. We can get really into it if you guys want.
Can you take out those extracts at once?
Yeah.
All of them?
Sure.
How much are each?
So I do 1 for 30, and then I do 3 for 25 each. So if you bought 3, they would be 75.
One of each.
All 4, okay.
I want to live to be 97 years old like my mother is right now.
I think we should.
She eat mushrooms? Birdo, she eats mushrooms?
So if you guys want I also have fresh mushroom. I don't know if that.
We have one more thing.
Okay, one more thing. Go ahead.
Mr. Bento, you wanted to auction off your.
Not auction, I want to donate this.
Donate.
This is an extreme